So if we look at certain athletes, we can ask the same question. Why is it that championship athletes, how do I reach this person? What's going on in that person's life? Do you ever wonder why somebody was really good, if not excellent, in one particular area, like maybe running a company? And then you just think that everything that this guy does has got to be so good, or gal, that whatever they touch is going to turn to gold. So the next company they start is going to be a huge hit. Like suppose Mark Zuckerberg decided to start something else away from Facebook or Meta. We might just assume it's going to be a huge hit. It's going to be transformative. It'll have a huge impact on the whole world and galaxy, just the same way his previous company did. But that actually happens so rarely. In fact, you can probably count on one hand how many people were great at one thing and then ultimately were able to follow that up with another great result. Most of the time, people have their genius zone just kind of honed in one area, and it's difficult to transition that over. Today, I want to focus on athletes because, as you know, that's a favorite space of mine, having come from it and having coached in it. And I also feel like that professional athlete or just overall athletic mindset translates so well over into business. It has for me, and that's why I love sharing this stuff with you guys. So if we look at certain athletes, we can ask the same question. Why is it that championship athletes were great in one area, and when they transitioned over into another aspect, like maybe going from player to eventual coach, they were catastrophically bad? Or if they went into management, they went from being an amazing player and teammate, championship level, and you think this guy would be amazing. It'd be great if he ran the team or the organization one day, and that doesn't actually pan out. The biggest example of this that I can think of is Michael Jordan. Obviously, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. Transitioned over into management for the Charlotte Bobcats, probably would be widely regarded as having fallen way short, especially with the expectations that we would have of Michael Jordan. Would think that anything he would touch would turn to gold. Not the case. So why is that? Is there something missing? Is there something he never adapted or put into practice? Or is it just luck? How does this actually work out? I want to focus on just athletes today. As you know, that's where I come from and the space I love the most because I find it so relatable. But I want to ask this question and get you guys thinking about it. Why is it that some athletes are so great in one aspect and when they transition over to another, they end up being like sometimes these catastrophic failures? Or why is it that certain leaders or heads of state have so many people quitting their cabinet or leaving their administration? If they were such a great leader and they got into that position, wouldn't everyone want to continue working for them? Wouldn't everyone want to stay connected to them? What is it that makes all these people quit? Even a company or the head of a company. You think about a genius CEO or one of these like renowned founders that has changed the world. Why is it that they have such high turnover at their company or within their business? There's a lot that goes into it. I'm going to just focus on one key area to keep this simple, but I don't mean to say simple in the context of that it's just a quick fix. This is a pretty complex topic, but we're going to keep it simple and get right to the point with it today because it, I think, is going to be the separator between what keeps people really successful in their leadership style in the modern day versus those that just kind of flame out. And what this ultimately comes down to, guys, is that the one size fits all philosophy when it comes to coaching or leadership is canceled. That philosophy comes from the tough love days. And I grew up in those days, having played for coaches that were like this or having worked for people that were like this, where this one size fits all, take it or leave it, my way or the highway type of talk and type of culture was what everyone was supposed to subscribe to and abide by. And you were either on board with it or you weren't. I'll give you some examples of people that are going to be tied to everyday life. Think of, on the political side, if you think of Donald Trump or even Kamala Harris, these are people who are really rigid in their governing and leadership style. And it's evidenced by the fact that they have such high turnover within their cabinets and or administration or offices. Now, you can agree with these people politically or not. I'm focused on what's actually happening culturally as it pertains to their leadership style and the people that are around them. In sports, think of Bobby Knight. Nobody was more tough love or hard-headed and rigid than Bobby Knight. Polarizing, rigid, as I said, and definitely not for everyone. You were either on board with it or you weren't. Sure, they had loads of successes, tremendous wins, and even some worthy of historical reference. But it was clear that there was something missing. One ingredient that, if was part of the mix, might have prolonged their success, might have etched them even more and deeper into the history books, and maybe would have kept more people around them for longer. So I want you to do this. I want you to think back to a coach that you played for if you were an athlete, whether it was in high school, collegiate, whatever it was, or someone that you worked for, a boss, a head of a department, a manager, and this was somebody that you loved to work for or loved to play for or be coached by. You bought into whatever that they had created. You were so ingrained in that culture and you experienced so much growth and success as a result of it. Do you recall, if you really think about it, what was it that made that experience so special and unique? And what made you continue to think about it and miss those days and recall and gain so much strength and wisdom from your time there? Now, I have worked for people like this. I've been coached when I was an athlete by people like this. And I very much tried to morph into a coach that would do this for the people and athletes that I was going to serve during my 10-year run as co-head coach for Team USA. But it took me some time to actually identify this. And I didn't actually quite do it fully and come full circle with it all until I read a book by Coach Pete Carroll. Now, the book was called Win Forever, and I read it during the pandemic because that's all you could do, right? Since we were all locked inside, you had to focus on personal growth, or you just binged Netflix or drank. Now, there were lots of aspects to what made Coach Carroll an amazing coach and someone who's going to be etched in the history books as one of the greatest. He won at the collegiate level as a national champion as coach of the University of Southern California, which is one of my favorites because my dad went there for his graduate degree. And then he also won as coach for the Seattle Seahawks, nearly won 2 Super Bowls, if not for a bad call at the goal line in the final seconds. But there's no doubt that Pete Carroll is a Hall of Fame coach, world class at his craft, and that people love playing for this guy. There's an expression in coaching that people refer to their coaches or the people leading these teams as a player's coach, meaning players love to be coached by this person. They love to play for this person. They give it their all for this person. Now, sure, he was a disciplinarian, but he had a unique way of connecting with people that I think we can all learn something from when it comes to either leading our groups, whether we are sales managers or we head up a small team or a unit, or if you're in a real serious position of leadership, whether it's in government or politics, or you are heading up an organization, or you're an actual coach of a team. Now, again, if you read Coach Carroll's book, there's a lot that goes into this, but the one takeaway, which is what this podcast is all about today, which is what this episode is all about today, is the concept of learning your learner, or knowing the people that you actually coach. For the one-size-fits-all tough love people, their philosophy was served as is because this is what they wholeheartedly believed in, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually a starting point, because part of having a coaching or leadership philosophy is to clearly state what it is you stand for, what you're going to tolerate or not tolerate. You need this. It's paramount. It's part of the foundation if you're going to have any kind of success in this arena. But in the tough love days, that's where it stopped. Once you had that, once they had that, they served it to you and it was take it or leave it. Get on board with this. Now we're in a different era and that doesn't quite work the same way. And I don't mean that people are getting soft, because I'm definitely against that. If you know anything about me, I don't want anyone to ever get soft. But I think as human beings, as employees, as entrepreneurs, as individuals, we're all starting to develop a different degree of self-awareness. First of all, we're acknowledging that it actually exists, and we're understanding that there's a whole emotional component to everything that we do and how we connect with people and how we want to be connected with. So the concept of learning your learner is to understand that one size fits all is not going to work when it comes to communicating. You can have your culture and your philosophy of what you want to stand for as a coach or a leader. But then if you want to get the most out of all the people that you're serving and leading, you've got to find out what makes each of these individuals tick. This is the success of any community or group, is knowing how does that particular person respond? How do I reach this person? What's going on in that person's life? Taking the time to do this. And I'm not saying that coaches and leaders of the past didn't spend any time on this, but I don't think it was done enough. Because if you do this, this pretty much tightens all the gaps to where there's no fall through when it comes to retention. And also when it comes to continuing to build a culture where others are going to want to buy in and continue to buy in and keep drinking what you're serving as a coach. And I don't mean that manipulatively. I mean, you have this cult-like following of people that will walk through fire for you. And if we think about it closely, guys, the best coaches and leaders, the people that followed them, actually employed this type of a mindset. Now, in the 10 years that I coached, I tried to make it a point, and I think everybody can do this when it comes to evaluating or taking stock of what you've done thus far, adjusting what's working, what's not working, and make the pivots that are necessary to take some steps forward and advance. But every single time we finished a coaching cycle through the World Championships in Taekwondo, I would sit down and evaluate all the coaching notes that I had. from all of the months of training, all the people that I was connecting with. And I would be really, really hard on myself in all of the lead up to the actual moments and big events, and then what I was actually doing during those events. And what could I have done differently? What adjustments could I have made? What could I have done to serve my athletes better and ensure that they had an even better chance of success in those great moments, because that's who I'm there to serve. And I feel like with each cycle, I got a little bit better. And the final one, before I stepped down as co-head coach, which I believe was my best personal performance as a coach in terms of the people I reached and served, it was because of this. I really spent the time to connect with all of the individual athletes and learn what makes them tick. How do they respond? What's the best way to get more out of them? Because if I had just applied what I started with on day one, which was the one size fits all approach, and in my defense, it's all I knew because that's how I was coached. That's how I came up in athletics. It wouldn't have worked, and it wasn't working in the beginning. But each time I would evolve by spending a little bit more time connecting with the people that were part of my team, part of my organization. So for you, if you are part of anything where you are in a role of leadership or heading anything up, again, regardless of the level or size, take the time to actually learn and connect with the people that are supposed to be following you. If you do this, I promise you, you'll have greater chance of success. You'll have even greater retention and buy-in. And you'll also be creating a culture where people are never going to want to turn it off for you. And that creates such team and camaraderie and a force that ultimately can't be stopped. So sure, it's fine to be polarizing and rigid in certain ways, but I think you can have that and be really firm and concrete in terms of your philosophy, but still employ this human aspect of connecting with other people, learning what makes them tick and how they operate, and ultimately seeking the best ways to get the most out of them. That's what the human experience is all about. And when you've had that done to you, it unleashes all kinds of growth and positivity. So I hope you got something out of this if you are in a position of leadership or you hope to be one day. And remember this podcast, because I know from personal experience, this has been the difference between having ultimate success and just getting by, and also having people stay with me versus losing them along the way. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode.